The alley reeked of piss and stale weed. Shadows danced in the flickering neon glow from the busted streetlight above. Officer Mike Irish O'Malley, sweat beading on his brow, stared down the barrel of a rusty .38. Holding it steady was Razor Redding, a young blood with eyes that had seen too much and a sneer that promised trouble. "You think you some kind of fucking hero, Irish?" Razor spat, his voice laced with venom. "Think you can just waltz in here and shut down my operation? This ain't your playground, man. This is my fucking kingdom." Irish felt a surge of adrenaline, but kept his voice steady. "Razor, put the gun down. This ain't worth it. There's a way out of this." "Way out? The only way out for me is 6 feet under or locked up in some cage, and I ain't going down without a fight, pig." Razor's finger tightened on the trigger. A bead of sweat trickled down Irish's temple. He knew this kid. Grew up with him even. Watched him spiral down into the abyss of the streets. And now, here they were, facing off in a grimy alley, their lives hanging in the balance. Razor's eyes narrowed. "You gonna shoot me, Irish? Go ahead. Pull the fucking trigger, do it." Time seemed to slow down. Irish's hand hovered over his holster. He could feel the weight of the gun, the cold metal against his skin. He could hear his own heart pounding in his chest. He could see the desperation in Razor's eyes, the flicker of fear beneath the bravado. And then everything went sideways. A gunshot echoed through the alley, but it wasn't from Irish's gun. Razor's eyes widened in shock as a crimson stain blossomed on his chest. He stumbled back, the gun clattering to the ground. Irish's heart leaped into his throat. Where the hell did that shot come from? 6 months earlier, Officer Mike O'Malley walked the beat in the South Side, a neighborhood riddled with poverty, crime, and despair. He wasn't. Some rookie fresh out of the academy. Irish was a veteran, a seasoned cop who knew the streets like the back of his hand. He'd seen it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But something about this place, this forgotten corner of the city, gnawed at him. It was like a cancer, eating away at the soul of the community. Irish wasn't just a cop. He was a product of the South Side. He'd grown up here, witnessed the struggles, felt the pain. He knew these streets, these people. He knew the kids who were slipping through the cracks, falling prey to the lure of the gangs and the drug trade. Kids like Razor Redding. Razor was a bright kid, sharp as a tack. Irish remembered him from the neighborhood basketball court, a skinny kid with a killer crossover and a smile that could light up a room. But somewhere along the line, things went wrong. His dad walked out, his mom got hooked on crack, and Razor fell in with the wrong crowd. Now, he was running with the Southside Serpents, a notorious gang that controlled the drug trade in the neighborhood. Irish had tried to reach out to Razor, tried to steer him straight. But the streets had a powerful grip on the kid. He was lost, caught in a cycle of violence and despair, and Irish felt powerless to stop it. One night, a call came in a drug deal gone wrong, shots fired. Irish was the first on the scene. He found a young boy, barely a teenager, lying in a pool of blood, a bullet hole in his chest. The kid was dead, another victim of the streets. Something snapped inside the Irish that night. He was tired of the violence, tired of the senseless deaths. He was going to clean up this neighborhood, even if it killed him. The investigation into the boy's death led Irish to Razor's doorstep. He knew Razor was involved, knew he was dealing drugs, but he needed proof. He needed to catch him red-handed. And that's how he ended up in that alley, facing down the barrel of Razor's gun. But the gunshot that rang out wasn't from Razor, nor was it from him. It came from the shadows, from a figure lurking in the darkness. Irish's heart pounded in his chest. Who the hell was that? And why did they shoot Razor? Irish's eyes darted to the rooftops, the fire escapes, any place where a shooter could be hiding. He drew his own weapon, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Razor slumped to the ground, clutching his chest, blood gushing between his fingers. "Shit!" Irish cursed, rushing to Razor's side. He pressed his hand against the wound, trying to stem the bleeding. "Hold on, Razor. Just hold on." Razor coughed, blood splattering his lips. He looked up at Irish, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and confusion. Who shot me?" he gasped. "I don't know," Irish said, his voice tight. "But I'm gonna find out." He looked around the alley, searching for any sign of the shooter. But there was nothing. Whoever it was, they were gone. Vanished into the night. Sirens wailed in the distance as paramedics arrived on the scene. They loaded Razor onto a stretcher and rushed him to the hospital. Irish watched them go, his gut churning with a mix of anger and guilt. He should have protected Razor. He should have seen this coming. The alley was swarming with cops now, lights flashing, voices echoing. Detectives were already on the scene, taking statements, gathering evidence. Irish gave his account of what happened, his voice shaking with emotion. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd failed Razor, failed the community. The next few days were a blur. Irish spent his time between the hospital, where Razor was fighting for his life, and the police station, where he was trying to piece together what happened that night. He interviewed witnesses, chased down leads, but nothing seemed to add the shooter was a ghost, leaving no trace behind. One evening, as Irish was leaving the hospital, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Detective Miller, a grizzled veteran with a reputation for bending the rules. "O'Malley," Miller said, his voice low. "Got a minute?" Irish nodded, his heart sinking. He knew Miller wasn't here to deliver good news. They walked to a secluded corner of the hospital parking lot. Miller lit a cigarette, the ember glowing in the darkness. "I've been looking into this shooting," Miller said, exhaling a plume of smoke. "And something ain't right." "What do you mean?" Irish asked, his voice tense. Miller took a drag of his cigarette. "I think this goes deeper than we thought. I think someone wanted Razor dead." "But who?" Irish asked. "And why?" Miller shrugged. "That's what we need to find out. But I got a feeling this ain't just some random act of violence. This is connected to something bigger, something dirty." Irish felt a chill run down his spine. He knew what Miller was implying. Corruption. It was a cancer that had plagued the city for years, reaching into the highest levels of power. And now, it seemed, it had reached the South Side. As Irish was driving home that night, a car pulled up alongside him. The window rolled down, revealing a face he recognized: Councilman Davis, a powerful politician with a reputation for shady dealings. "O'Malley," Davis said, his voice smooth and menacing. "I hear you've been asking questions about the shooting in the alley." Irish's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Yeah, so?" Davis smiled, a chilling smile that sent shivers down Irish's spine. "I suggest you drop it. Some things are best left buried." The car sped off, leaving Irish in a cloud of exhaust fumes. He stared at the receding taillights, his heart pounding in his chest. He was in over his head. He'd stumbled onto something erupts, something that could cost him his life. Irish's blood ran cold. Councilman Davis, a man known for his philanthropic smile and backroom deals, was now directly threatening him. The weight of the situation slammed into him. He wasn't just dealing with a street punk anymore. He was caught in a web of corruption that stretched far beyond the South Side. He gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, and forced himself to breathe. Fear was a luxury he couldn't afford. He had a job to do, a promise to keep to a dying kid in a hospital bed. He had to find out who shot Razor and why. The next morning, Irish went to see Razor. The kid was still weak, hooked up to machines, but alive. Relief washed over Irish, followed by a renewed determination. He had to get Razor to talk, to tell him who was behind this. "Razor," Irish said, his voice gentle. "You gotta help me here. Who shot you? Who wanted you dead?" Razor's eyes flickered open, pain clouding his gaze. He coughed, a rattling sound that sent chills down Irish's spine. It was Snake," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Snake?" Irish asked, his brow furrowing. "Who the hell is Snake?" He's the head of the serpents," Razor said, his voice growing weaker. He runs everything." Snake. The name sent a jolt through Irish. He'd heard whispers of this mysterious figure, a shadowy kingpin who controlled the South Side's underworld. But he'd never been able to get a solid lead on him. With a name and a new lead, Irish knew he couldn't go through official channels. Davis had his fingers in too many pies. He needed someone on the inside, someone who could get him close to Snake. He thought of Mama Rose, an old woman who ran a soul food joint in the heart of Serpent territory. She was known for her delicious cooking and her sharp wit, but also for her connections. She knew everyone, heard everything. Irish found her in the kitchen, stirring a pot of collar, D greens. The air was thick with the smell of spices and simmering meat. "Mama Rose," Irish said, his voice respectful. "I need your help." She looked at him, her eyes sharp and knowing. "What kind of help you need, Officer O'Malley?" Irish explained the situation, the shooting, the corruption, the mysterious Snake. Mama Rose listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she sighed. "This ain't gonna be easy, son. Snake is a dangerous man, but I might be able to help you get to him." Mama Rose arranged a meeting. A dark, abandoned warehouse on the docks, the kind of place where deals were made and bodies were buried. Irish arrived alone, his heart pounding in his chest. The warehouse was dimly lit, shadows dancing in the flickering light of a single bulb. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall and imposing. "Snake. You, O'Malley?" Snake asked, his voice a low growl. "That's me," Irish said, trying to maintain his composure. Snake stepped closer, his eyes burning into Irish. "I hear you've been asking questions about my business." Irish felt a chill run down his spine. He was playing with fire, but he had to see this through. "I need to know who shot Razor," Irish said, his voice firm. Snake chuckled, a chilling sound that echoed through the warehouse. "You got a lot of nerve coming here, asking me questions?" He reached into his coat, and Irish's hand instinctively went to his holster. But Snake wasn't reaching for a gun. He pulled out a small velvet pouch. "Here's your answer," Snake said, tossing the pouch at Irish's feet. Irish cautiously picked it up and opened it. Inside, nestled in the soft velvet, was a severed finger. Razor's finger. Irish stared at the severed finger, nausea rising in his throat. This wasn't a game anymore. This was a declaration of war. Snake was showing him, in the most brutal way possible, that he was untouchable. Rage surged through Irish, hot and blinding. He wanted to lunge across the table, grab Snake by the throat, and squeeze the life out of him. But he knew that would be suicide. He had to play it smart, stay calm. "You think this scares me?" Irish said, his voice shaking with anger. "You just made this personal, Snake." Snake laughed, a cold, heartless sound. "Scared? You should be. You're messing with forces you don't understand, cop. This ain't your little playground. This is my city." Irish took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay focused. "Your city? You're nothing but a thug, Snake. A parasite feeding off the misery of others. You think you're powerful? You're pathetic." Snake's eyes narrowed. "You got a big mouth, cop. Let's see how long you can keep running it." He snapped his fingers, and two hulking figures emerged from the shadows. They moved towards Irish, their faces hard and menacing. Irish knew he was in trouble. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in a warehouse on the docks. But he wasn't going down without a fight. He drew his weapon, his heart pounding in his chest. The two thugs lunged at him, and a brutal brawl erupted. Irish fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, landing punches and kicks, but his opponents were relentless. He felt a sharp pain in his ribs as one of the thugs landed a solid blow. He stumbled back, gasping for air. The other thug grabbed him from behind, pinning his arms to his sides. Snake stepped forward, a cruel smile on his face. "Looks like you're out of luck, cop." He raised his fist, ready to deliver the final blow. But just then, a gunshot rang out. The thug holding Irish grunted and slumped to the ground, a bullet hole in his back. Irish's eyes widened in surprise. Where did that shot come from? He looked up and saw Mama Rose standing in the shadows, a smoking gun in her hand. Her face was grim, her eyes filled with a cold fury he'd never seen before. "Don't you touch him," Mama Rose said, her voice low and dangerous. Snake stared at her, his face contorted in rage. "You old bitch! You think you can interfere with my business?" "This ain't your business anymore, Snake," Mama Rose said, her voice unwavering. "This is about justice." She fired another shot, and the second thug went down. Snake hesitated, his eyes darting between Mama Rose and Irish. He knew he was outnumbered, outgunned. He backed away, his face twisted in a snarl. "This ain't over, O'Malley. You and that old hag will pay for this." He turned and disappeared into the darkness. Irish stared at Mama Rose, his mind reeling. He couldn't believe what he'd just witnessed. Mama Rose lowered the gun, her hand trembling. She looked at Irish, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and determination. "You need to get out of here, son," she said, her voice weary. "This city is rotten to the core. You can't fight it alone." Irish nodded, his heart heavy. He knew she was right, but he couldn't just walk away. He had to see this through for Razor, for the community, for himself. "I can't give up now, Mama Rose," he said, his voice firm. "I'm not going to let them win." Mama Rose sighed. "Then you're gonna need help, more help than I can give you." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. On it was a name and a phone number. "This man can help you," she said. "He's the only one who can." Irish took the paper, his eyes widening as he recognized the name. It was the name of a man he thought he'd never see again. A man who had once been his mentor, his friend. A man who had disappeared years ago, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. The man who could bring down the entire corrupt system. The name on the slip of paper was etched in Irish's memory. Special Agent Marcus Hawk Hawthorne. His old mentor, a legend in the Bureau. A man who vanished without a trace years ago. The same man who'd taught Irish everything he knew about fighting corruption, about staying true to the badge even when the world around you was rotting. Irish stared at the number, a wave of emotions washing over him. Hope, disbelief, and a gnawing fear that this was too good to be true. Was Hawk really back? And if so, why? What had he been doing all these years? He didn't hesitate. He dialed the number, his hand trembling slightly. The phone rang once, twice, then a gruff voice answered. "Hawthorne." "Hawk? It's Irish. Mike O'Malley." A pause, then a low chuckle. "Irish? Damn, kid, it's been a while. Heard you were making a name for yourself on the force." Irish felt a surge of relief. It was him. Hawk was real, and he was here. "Hawk, I need your help. I'm in deep. Corruption, drugs, murder. It's all connected." Hawk's voice hardened. "Tell me everything." Irish poured out the whole story. The shooting, Snake, Councilman Davis, the severed finger, Mama Rose's intervention. Hawk listened patiently, absorbing every detail. When Irish finished, Hawk sighed. "Sounds like the city's gone to hell, Irish. Worse than when I left." "It's bad, Hawk. Real bad. Davis is dirty, but he's just the tip of the iceberg. There's something bigger going on, something I can't quite grasp." "I know, Irish. I know." Hawk's voice was heavy with a grim understanding. "I've been watching, waiting for the right moment to strike back, and it looks like that moment has arrived." Hawk revealed that he'd been undercover all these years, infiltrating a vast criminal network that stretched far beyond the city limits. He'd been gathering evidence, building a case that could bring down the entire operation. His eye explained that Snake was just a pawn in a much larger game, a puppet controlled by powerful figures lurking in the shadows. Figures who were pulling the strings, manipulating the system, profiting from the misery of the South Side. Hawk had a plan, a risky plan that involved exposing the entire network and bringing the corrupt officials to justice. But he needed Irish's help. He needed someone on the inside, someone who could gather evidence and expose the truth. Irish didn't hesitate. He was in. He owed it to Razor, to Mama Rose, to the community he swore to protect. He owed it to himself. They met at a safe house, a nondescript apartment on the outskirts of the city. Hawk laid out the plan, outlining the roles, the risks, the potential consequences. "This is dangerous, Irish," Hawk warned. "They'll be coming for you. They'll stop at nothing to protect themselves." Irish nodded, his jaw set. "I know, but I'm ready." The final showdown took place at a lavish gala, a gathering of the city's elite. Irish, undercover as a waiter, moved through the crowd, gathering evidence, planting bugs, his heart pounding in his chest. He saw Councilman Davis, his face flushed with champagne, laughing with a group of powerful businessmen. He saw Snake lurking in the shadows, his eyes scanning the room. The tension was palpable, the air thick with deceit and corruption. Irish knew that one wrong move could blow his cover, could cost him his life. As the night wore on, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The connections, the backroom deals, the flow of dirty money, it was all there, laid bare before him. And then, the moment arrived. Hawk stormed the gala, his team of agents flanking him. The music stopped. The chatter died down as Hawk's voice boomed through the room. "This party's over," he announced, his eyes blazing with righteous fury. "You're all under arrest." Chaos erupted. The guests panicked, scrambling for the exits. Security guards rushed towards Hawk, but they were no match for the seasoned agents. Irish watched the scene unfold, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. He'd done it. He'd helped bring down the corrupt network that had plagued the city for years. But as the dust settled, a chilling realization dawned on him. This was just the beginning. The fight for justice was far from over. There were still powerful forces at play, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike back. And Irish knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he would be ready for them.